Daniel stepped off the shuttle with his heart pounding. The air smelled sharp and clean, almost metallic, and the sky above was not blue but a strange violet shade. Around him stretched a wide field of crystal-like grass that sparkled faintly, under the light of twin suns. This was not Earth. This was the planet Eloria, home of a people who had invited humans into their community after years of cautious talks. For Daniel, it was more than a trip. It was the start of a test. He was part of the first group of humans sent here, chosen not for his strength or skills, but because he had something different, courage to face the unknown. He glanced around nervously as tall, elegant figures approached him. The Elorians were unlike any beings he had seen before. Their skin shimmered in soft colors that changed with the light, and their eyes glowed like polished gems. They moved with grace, each step measured and balanced. Though they looked fragile, Daniel had heard stories of their speed, their tactical minds, and their relentless training from a young age. One figure stood out among the crowd, a young alien girl, her hair flowing like silver silk and her eyes burning with a playful spark, pushed through the others. She looked no older than Daniel himself, though appearances could be deceiving. She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Then, with a mischievous smile, she spoke in the common tongue. "So, you are the human." Daniel swallowed and nodded. "That's me." The crowd chuckled softly at his simple answer, but the girl did not laugh. She leaned closer, her smile widening. "Do you play?" "Play what?" Daniel asked, confused. "The game," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Every newcomer must play. It is our way." Before Daniel could ask more, she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength and pulled him forward. The crowd followed, murmuring with excitement. They arrived at a wide open arena made of smooth black stone. Strange glowing symbols circled its edges, and in the center lay a set of tall pillars, uneven platforms, and strange obstacles that looked like a mix of playground and battlefield. Daniel stared at it. "What exactly is this?" The alien girl let go of his wrist and stood tall, her silver hair catching the light. "It is called Valor, a game of speed, wit, and survival. You must run, climb, hide, trick, and last longer than the others. It is not about who is strongest. It is about who understands the round." "And if I lose?" Daniel asked carefully. Her grin grew sharp but not cruel. "Then you go home early. But if you last, you earn respect. And maybe friends." The crowd cheered as more young Elorians stepped into the arena. Each one moved with confidence, stretching their limbs, preparing themselves. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He was no athlete. He had never faced anything like this. But turning back would mean proving every doubt about humans right. He clenched his fists and walked into the arena. The alien girl laughed softly and followed. "Good. You are brave. I am Lyra, daughter of the tactician. Remember my name, human." The round began with a deep hum. The pillars lit up in streaks of gold, and the ground vibrated slightly. Daniel's instinct screamed at him to run, so he did. Around him, the aliens moved like flowing streams, climbing pillars with ease, leaping across platforms, darting from shadow to shadow. Daniel stumbled at first, nearly falling as he tried to climb. His arms shook and his breath came fast. "Too slow," one alien called out as they leapt past him. But Daniel did not give up. He remembered his schoolyard days, games of tag with friends, and the way he had always found paths no one else noticed. Instead of climbing the tallest pillar, he slid under a low gap, hiding between two blocks. The aliens rushed past, too focused on speed to notice. Daniel smiled. Maybe he wasn't fast, but he could be clever. The game continued. Aliens tagged each other out by touching with glowing bands on their wrists. One by one, players were eliminated, until only a few remained. Daniel avoided direct fights, instead sneaking around and letting others knock each other out. He hid, watched, and then moved when the time was right. His human instincts for patience began to pay off. When only 3 were left, Daniel peeked from behind a pillar and found Lyra standing across the arena. Her eyes locked onto his. She smirked, lifting her wristband glowing with golden light. "You lasted longer than I thought," she called out. Daniel grinned, though his chest burned with exhaustion. "Guess humans aren't as easy to beat as you expected." The crowd roared with excitement. They had not thought the fragile human would survive this long. Lyra tilted her head, amused, and stepped closer. Then, "Great human, let us play one more round before anyone reaches home." The hum sounded again, signaling the next round. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, feeling both fear and excitement. This was no longer just a game. It was a challenge, a test, and perhaps the start of something greater. He braced himself as Lyra charged forward, her movements quick as lightning. Daniel's heart raced. Could he outthink her too? He didn't know, but he was ready to try. For the first time since landing on this alien world, Daniel no longer felt like a visitor. He felt like a player. The sound of the hum filled the arena again, and the pillars glowed brighter. The crowd leaned forward, eager to see what the human would do this time. Daniel's body ached from running, climbing, and hiding in the last round, but he refused to give in. He had lasted longer than anyone expected, and that gave him a burst of pride. Lyra stood across from him, tall and confident. Her silver hair shimmered in the violet light of the twin suns, and her eyes sparkled with challenge. She lifted her wristband, the golden glow reflecting across her sharp features. "Are you ready, human?" she called. Daniel took a deep breath. "Not really," he answered honestly. The crowd laughed, but Lyra only smiled wider. "Good. It means you will try harder." The round began. Lyra moved first, rushing at Daniel with quick steps. He had no chance to outrun her speed, so he dodged instead. He rolled to the side, sliding under a low arch, and scrambled up a smaller pillar. She leapt after him like a wildcat, her movements smooth and precise. Daniel's heart thumped. He was not as fast, not as strong, but his mind worked in ways hers didn't expect. As she climbed after him, he pushed off the pillar and dropped down, running in the opposite direction. Lyra landed where he had been only a second before. She blinked, surprised, then laughed out loud. "Tricky human," she shouted. The chase continued. Daniel used the arena differently from the others. While most Aelorians climbed high and tried to corner opponents, Daniel stayed low, weaving through narrow spaces, ducking and finding shortcuts. It reminded him of the times he had played hide-and-seek back on Earth. He could almost hear his younger self laughing as he tricked his friends by hiding in plain sight. Lyra kept following, but she was not angry. Instead, she looked excited, like someone finally found a challenge worth her time. Every time she almost caught him, Daniel found another way to slip away. Once he even distracted her by tossing a loose stone in the opposite direction. She spun at the sound, giving him a moment to escape. The crowd gasped in surprise, never having seen such a strange tactic. When Daniel darted behind a block and crouched low, his chest heaving, Lyra's voice echoed, "Humans, you are not strong, but you are clever. I like this game more now." Daniel peeked out, wiping sweat from his brow. "You sound like you're enjoying this." "Of course," Lyra said, stepping closer, her steps deliberate. "Games are not about winning alone. They are about learning who you are." Her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. Maybe this was not just a test of skill. It was a way for the Aelorians to measure character. And maybe, in some way, it was also her way of knowing him. Finally, she cornered him near the tall pillars. He looked left and right, but there was no path open. Lyra approached slowly, her wristband glowing brighter. "This is the end, human." Daniel's mind raced. He had one choice left. He looked up at the nearest pillar and without thinking began to climb. His hands slipped on the smooth stone, but he kept going. His arms trembled, and his legs screamed with effort, but he climbed higher. Lyra followed, moving effortlessly, closing the distance. At the top, Daniel looked down. The ground seemed far away and his grip was weak. Lyra was only a step below him. She reached out her glowing wristband, ready to tap his shoulder and claim victory. But Daniel did something unexpected. Instead of trying to run or fight, he leapt sideways off the pillar, landing hard on another platform. Pain shot through his legs, but he managed to roll and get back on his feet. Lyra, stunned by the move, almost slipped. For a second, her balance faltered. Without thinking, Daniel reached up and grabbed her hand. He steadied her before she could fall. The crowd gasped at the sight, a human helping his opponent instead of using the moment to win. Lyra stared at him, eyes wide. For the first time, her playful smile faded. "Why did you do that?" she asked softly. Daniel shrugged, still holding her hand. "Because it looked like you needed help." Her eyes searched his face for a moment, then her smile returned, but it was different now, softer, almost warm. She climbed down with him, and when they reached the ground, she raised her wristband and tapped his arm lightly. The golden glow transferred to him, marking his elimination. "You lost," she said, her grin playful again. Daniel chuckled, out of breath. "Yeah, but it feels like I won something too." The crowd cheered loudly. They had seen strength, speed, and tactics many times before, but rarely had they seen kindness in the middle of a fierce game. Daniel had shown them something new, the human way of playing. After the round ended, Lyra walked beside him as the crowd dispersed. "You surprised me, human. I thought you would give up in the first moments, but you keep finding ways to stay. You are not like the others I have faced." Daniel rubbed his sore arms. "I guess humans are full of surprises." Lyra tilted her head, studying him with that same spark in her eyes. "Then prove it. Tomorrow there will be another round. I want you there." Daniel blinked. "You want me to play again?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Great, human. Let us play one more round before anyone reaches home." Her words echoed in Daniel's mind long after he returned to his quarters. He lay on his bed, staring at the alien ceiling, thinking about what had happened. He had come here to represent his people, but now it felt more personal. Lyra was no longer just an opponent. She was a bridge between two worlds, and he wondered what would happen in the next round. The next morning, Daniel woke up sore in every muscle. His arms felt heavy, his legs ached, and his shoulders throbbed from climbing and jumping. He groaned as he sat up on the soft alien bedding, wondering why he had agreed to play again. He could have said no. He could have saved himself the pain and humiliation. But deep inside, something told him he couldn't stop now. The challenge was more than just a game. It was a chance to prove that humans could stand among the Aelorians as equals. And it was also about Lyra. The way she had looked at him yesterday, half playful, half curious, lingered in his mind. She wanted to see him again in the arena. That alone was enough to push him forward. When Daniel arrived at the training grounds, he found the arena already buzzing with excitement. Word had spread fast. The human who had lasted longer than expected had drawn a larger crowd. More aliens stood on the black stone platforms, their shimmering skin reflecting the morning light. Some of them were smiling with interest, but others were whispering with narrowed eyes. "He is only human," one muttered. "He cheated yesterday with tricks," another said. "He will not last again," a third added. Daniel heard their words but didn't let them sink in. He had grown up with doubt all his life. Teachers saying he wasn't focused enough, classmates saying he wasn't strong enough, even his own mind sometimes whispering that he wasn't good enough. But here, on this alien world, he had found something different. He had found a reason to keep trying. Lyra appeared from the crowd, her steps light and confident. She wore the same glowing wristband, and her silver hair caught the sun like threads of light. When she saw Daniel, her lips curved into a grin. "You came back." Daniel smirked, even though he felt nervous. "Didn't want you to think humans run away." Her eyes sparkled. "Good. Because today, it will not be easy." The hum of the arena began again. The pillars lit up, and the ground vibrated as if welcoming the players. Daniel stepped into the ring along with 12 other Aelorian youths. The crowd cheered, louder than yesterday, their voices echoing like a wave. The round started. Instantly, the aliens moved with breathtaking speed. They leapt across platforms, climbed with ease, and darted toward their opponents with glowing bands ready to tag. Daniel ducked low, remembering his strategy from yesterday. While others rushed to show off their strength, he moved quietly, slipping through gaps, letting chaos swirl around him. But this time, the players were different. They had seen his tricks before, and they were prepared. One alien cut him off when he tried to sneak behind a block. Another mimicked his tactic of staying low, trying to trap him. Daniel's heart pounded. They were adapting to him. He had to adapt too. Instead of running, Daniel began to watch. He noticed patterns. One alien always turned left when chased, another always climbed the tallest pillar first, and another lost focus when distracted. Daniel smiled. This was just like playing chess, but with moving pieces and his own body as the king. He used the smallest mistakes to his advantage. When one alien focused on tagging another, Daniel ducked behind them and slipped away. When two players clashed on a pillar, he circled beneath and took the safer path. Slowly, one by one, others were eliminated, their bands glowing dim as they left the arena. The crowd began to murmur. The human was still in. Again, Daniel's lungs burned and his legs shook with exhaustion, but he pushed forward. Sweat dripped down his face, stinging his eyes. Every second felt longer than the last, but every second also mattered. Lyra watched him with interest from across the arena. She wasn't chasing him this time. Instead, she seemed to be studying him, as if waiting to see how far he could go without her interference. When their eyes met, she gave him a small nod, an unspoken encouragement. But not everyone felt the same. A taller alien named Vaynor, known for his strength and arrogance, scowled at Daniel. His shimmering green skin flared brighter with frustration as he noticed how the crowd's attention shifted toward the human. "This ends now," he growled. Vaynor charged at Daniel with terrifying speed. Daniel barely managed to leap aside, rolling across the ground. He scrambled to his feet, panting, as Vaynor loomed over him. The alien's glowing band swept through the air inches from Daniel's arm. "Too slow, human," Vaynor sneered. Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't outrun Vaynor forever, so he changed tactics. He darted toward the pillars, pretending to climb. As Vaynor followed, Daniel suddenly dropped back down, sliding under the alien's legs. Before Vaynor could react, Daniel grabbed a loose stone from the ground and tossed it into the opposite corner. The sound echoed loudly, and for a split second, Vaynor turned his head instinctively. That was all Daniel needed. He sprinted away, ducking behind another block. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers. The human had escaped again. Vaynor roared in anger, his pride wounded. "You cannot hide forever." Daniel leaned against the block, chest heaving, and whispered to himself, "I don't need forever, just long enough." The game pressed on. More players were eliminated, leaving only 4. Vaynor, Lyra, Daniel, and another quick-footed alien, girl. The arena grew silent, the tension thick. Everyone knew this was no longer just a game, it was becoming a statement. Daniel stood straighter now. He was bruised, tired, and aching, but he had come too far to quit. He looked at Lyra across the arena. She smiled again, but this time her eyes carried something deeper, respect. The final moments came quickly. The other alien girl tried to take down Lyra, but Lyra was faster, eliminating her with a swift strike. That left 3. Lyra, Vaynor, and Daniel. Vaynor's eyes locked onto Daniel with fury. "This round ends with you gone." He charged again, his footsteps shaking the ground. Daniel dodged left, then right, but Vaynor was relentless. At the last second, Daniel stumbled backward, cornered near the glowing pillars. His body screamed in exhaustion. He couldn't last much longer, but then Lyra stepped between them. "Enough," she said firmly. Vaynor snarled, "Stay out of this. The human is mine." Lyra's voice rose, carrying over the crowd. "This game is not about destroying. It is about testing, and he has proven himself already." Daniel blinked in surprise. She was defending him. Vaynor glared at her, his pride clashing with her authority. For a tense moment, it seemed he would ignore her. but the hum of the arena ended, signaling the round's close. The crowd erupted into cheers, not for Vayner, but for the human who had lasted yet again. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. He had survived. Lyra walked to him, offering her hand. He took it, and she pulled him up with ease. Her smile returned, warm and teasing. "Great human. You last longer every day. Soon you may even outlast me." Daniel managed a weak grin. "Don't count me out yet." The crowd chanted his name, strange on their tongues but full of excitement. Daniel had gone from being an outsider to being someone they couldn't ignore. And though rivals like Vayner simmered with anger, Daniel knew he had earned something. More important than victory, he had earned respect, and tomorrow there would be another round. The arena was more crowded than ever. Word of the humans' endurance had spread across the settlement, and now almost every Elorian youth and elder had come to watch. The black stone ring shimmered under the twin suns, the pillars glowing faintly, as if alive. The hum that marked each round echoed in the air, steady and deep like a heartbeat. Daniel stood at the edge, his body sore but his spirit unbroken. His clothes were torn at the sleeves, dust clung to his face, and his muscles still ached from yesterday's struggle. Yet his eyes were sharp, alive with determination. He had survived rounds against stronger, faster, more agile aliens. He had escaped Vayner's wrath. He had proven he was no fragile outsider, but today felt different. Today, the crowd was not murmuring with doubt. They were waiting with curiosity, excitement, even admiration. He could feel their eyes on him, expecting him to give everything he had. Lyra walked into the arena with quiet confidence. Her silver hair floated gently in the breeze, and her eyes gleamed like polished steel. She wore the same glowing wrist band, but her smile was not playful this time. It was serious, though touched with warmth. She stopped in front of Daniel. The crowd fell silent. "Today," she said, her voice carrying across the arena, "there will be no running from shadows, no hiding behind others. You and I will face each other." Daniel's chest tightened. He had expected this, but hearing her say it out loud sent a shiver down his spine. "Just me and you?" "Just us," Lyra confirmed. "If you are to earn a place among us, then show me your heart, human. Show me what you truly are." The hum deepened and the pillars flared with golden light. The game had begun. Lyra moved first, quick as lightning. She darted toward Daniel, her wristband glowing bright. Daniel jumped back, nearly stumbling, and forced himself to focus. He couldn't match her speed, but he could use her strength against her. He ran toward a cluster of low blocks, weaving between them. Lyra followed smoothly, never losing sight of him. Her steps were sharp, her movements precise. Daniel ducked behind a pillar, then rolled out the other side, making her circle wider to catch him. "You still run," she called. "I call it strategy," he shot back, breathing hard. She smiled, even as she pressed harder. Every move she made was faster than his. Every leap, every turn, it was as though she could predict him before he acted. Daniel's chest heaved. His body screamed for rest. But he kept moving. He remembered her words from before. Games are about learning who you are. He thought about what he had shown so far. Cleverness, patience, kindness. But was it enough? Lyra cornered him near the tallest pillar. He could climb, but she would catch him before he reached the top. He could run, but her speed would close the gap. He was trapped. Daniel's mind spun. He thought of Earth, of the times he had faced challenges bigger than himself. He thought of how humans survive not by being the strongest, but by standing together, by finding paths no one else saw. He took a deep breath and stepped forward instead of backward. Lyra blinked, surprised. Daniel moved directly into her space, forcing her to adjust. She swung her wristband toward him, but he ducked low, rolling beneath her arm and tapping the ground to pivot around. She turned quickly, her hair whipping, but Daniel was already sprinting the other way. The crowd gasped. They had expected him to retreat, but he had pressed forward. Lyra's smile returned, sharper now. Better human, much better. They circled, the arena like two dancers, one graceful and fast, the other stubborn and unpredictable. Lyra leapt high onto a pillar and jumped down toward him, aiming for his shoulder. Daniel dived aside, barely avoiding her strike. She landed smoothly, her wrist glowing inches from his arm. "You are almost caught," she teased. Daniel laughed breathlessly. Story of my life. The chase continued. Daniel used every ounce of creativity he had. He kicked dust into the air to block her view. He zigzagged in patterns that made no sense, forcing her to guess his direction. Once he even doubled back, running right past her before she could turn. Each time the crowd roared with surprise, but each time Lyra adapted faster. She was learning him the way he had learned her. At last, they faced each other again in the center of the arena. Daniel's chest rose and fell heavily, sweat dripping down his face. Lyra stood tall, barely winded, her glowing wristband ready. "It ends here," she said. Daniel looked at her and realized something important. This wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't even about surviving the round. It was about showing her what it meant to be human. He steadied himself. "Then let's end it right." Lyra rushed forward, her movements a blur. Daniel didn't retreat. He didn't dodge. Instead, he stepped directly into her path. At the last moment when her hand was about to strike, he grabbed her wrist, not to stop her, but to steady her. Her eyes widened as their movements slowed. Daniel looked into them, his voice low but clear. "Humans don't just fight to win. We fight to protect, to connect, even if it costs us everything." For a moment, silence filled the arena. Lyra's glowing wristband hovered inches from his shoulder. She could tag him easily, but she didn't move. She stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she tapped his shoulder. The band flared, marking Daniel's elimination. The crowd erupted, cheering so loudly the ground seemed to shake. Daniel bent forward, panting, his body trembling with exhaustion. Lyra stood before him, her chest rising and falling more quickly than before. Then, to the surprise of everyone, she extended her hand. "Great human," she said softly. "You have shown me more than I expected. You have lost the round, but you have won my respect." Daniel took her hand, gripping it tightly. "That's enough for me." The crowd's cheers turned into a chant, not just of her name, but of his. For the first time, Daniel realized they no longer saw him as a fragile outsider. They saw him as one of them. Lyra leaned closer, her smile returning, warm and mischievous, again. "Still, tomorrow, we play one more round before anyone reaches home." Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't give up, do you?" "Never," she replied. As they walked out of the arena together, side by side, Daniel felt something shift. The game had ended, but a new beginning had just started. The sun rose the next day over the alien settlement, casting a soft violet glow across the crystal fields. The air was calm, almost gentle, but Daniel's heart still raced from the memory of yesterday's match. He sat quietly outside the guest quarters, his legs sore, his arms heavy, but his mind alive. The cheers of the crowd echoed in his ears. Not for Lyra, not for Vayner, but for him, a human. He looked at his hands, still scraped from climbing pillars and sliding across stone. He had lost the final round, but somehow it didn't feel like a loss. He had faced Lyra directly. He had stood his ground, not with strength, but with honesty. And in that moment, something had changed. As he sat lost in thought, he heard light footsteps approach. He turned to see Lyra standing before him, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes calm but curious. She did not wear her wristband today. Instead, she carried a simple flask of water which she offered to him. "You should drink," she said. "Humans need more rest than we do." Daniel accepted it with a tired smile. "Thanks. You don't look tired at all." She tilted, her head. "I am used to the game, you are not. Yet you lasted against me. That means more than you realize." He sipped the water, then set the flask down beside him. "I don't know if I can keep up with you forever." Lyra smiled, faint but genuine. You do not need to. You already showed me something I had never seen before. Daniel frowned slightly. What's that? She sat down beside him, her voice quieter. Compassion in the middle of competition. You had me at the edge of a fall, and you chose to help instead of win. That is not how we are taught to play. To us, victory is everything, but you showed me that victory can mean something else. Daniel looked at her, realizing her words carried weight beyond the game. For her people, the matches were more than play. They were training, tradition, and culture. His actions had challenged that. Maybe, Daniel said softly, sometimes, the best way to win is not to beat someone but to stand beside them. Lyra's eyes sparkled. Strange words, human. But I like them. The days that followed were different. Daniel still played rounds in the arena, but the mood had shifted. The other Aelorians no longer whispered doubts or mocked his speed. Instead, they studied him, some even copying his unusual tricks, throwing pebbles to distract, doubling back in unexpected moves, hiding low instead of climbing high. What had once been considered clumsy human behavior was now seen as clever. Even Vaynor, though still proud and bitter, watched him with grudging respect. He did not speak to Daniel, but he no longer dismissed him either. That, Daniel thought, was victory enough, but the one who seemed to change the most was Lyra. She still played fiercely, still moved with speed and grace, but there was something new in her smile when she faced Daniel. She teased him less harshly, laughed more warmly, and often repeated her favorite challenge. Great human. One more round before anyone reaches home. One evening, after another long game that left Daniel flat on his back staring at the stars, Lyra sat beside him again. The crowd had gone, leaving the arena quiet. The pillars no longer glowed, and the hum had faded into silence. You never quit, she said, looking down at him. Daniel chuckled weakly. Maybe I'm just too stubborn. No, she said softly. You are brave. Different brave from us. We fight to prove ourselves. You fight to connect. That is why you last. Daniel turned his head toward her. The stars reflected in her eyes, bright and endless. You think so? She nodded. Yes. And I think that is why I want to keep playing with you, not just in the arena, in life. Her words startled him, but not in a bad way. His chest tightened, but it wasn't fear, it was something else, something warmer. Are you saying you actually enjoy chasing me around every day? He asked with a grin. She laughed, the sound light and musical. Yes. And more than that, I enjoy learning from you. You make me see my people in a new way. You make me see myself in a new way. Daniel sat up slowly, ignoring the ache in his muscles. He looked at her, serious now. Lyra, I don't know if I'll ever be able to match you in strength or speed, but I'll keep trying, because I like playing with you too. Her smile softened, and for a moment they simply sat in silence, two different beings from two different worlds, yet bound by the same simple truth. The game had brought them together, but what grew between them was more than play. The next day, during the gathering of elders, Lyra stood beside Daniel as the games were discussed. The elders spoke of tradition, of strength, of testing youth through Valor, but Lyra lifted her voice and said, There is more to Valor than strength. This human has shown us that heart and wit are also paths to victory. We should remember that. The elders looked at Daniel, then at the crowd of youths who nodded in agreement. Slowly, the oldest among them said, Perhaps the human has taught us something new. Daniel bowed his head respectfully. I only played the way humans play. I'm honored if it means something to you. From that day forward, the story of the human who played Valor spread through the settlement. He was not remembered as the strongest or the fastest, but as the one who showed compassion even in competition. And for the Aelorians, that was a new kind of greatness. As Daniel prepared to return to his quarters that night, Lyra caught his hand. He turned and she smiled at him with that familiar spark in her eyes. Great human, she whispered, before anyone reaches home, Let's play one more round. Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head. You'll never stop asking that, will you? Never, she replied firmly. And as they walked back together under the violet sky, Daniel realized the truth. Home was no longer just Earth. Home was here too, on this strange world, beside an alien girl who had taught him as much as he had taught her.